During the Middle Ages, the Islamic world stretched across the Middle East, the Far East, Africa, and Spain and absorbed many regional traditions. Attitudes to music were equally diverse and still shape many of the oral traditions handed down to the present day. Welcome to Music History Podcast by Viola Studio Channel. Islamic music. The muezzin's call to prayer and the recitation of the Quran dominate the Islamic sound world, but over the centuries attitudes to music have varied, largely because of its ambiguous status in Islamic law. From the 7th century CE, not long after the Prophet Muhammad's death, Islamic orthodoxy largely condemned music for its ability to arouse desire, grief, and other base passions. The use of instruments in devotional music was haram, or forbidden, as was the participation of women. Music as entertainment may have been condemned by Islamic law, but early scholars such as Al-Farabi and Ibn Sina, the 11th century Persian known as Avicenna in the West, discussed the healing properties of music. In the Sufi tradition of Islam, whose followers were drawn to mysticism, writers in the 11th and 12th centuries defended listening to music as a spiritual exercise that could draw the listener nearer to the divine. Al-Farabi. The philosopher, cosmologist, and musician Al-Farabi was born either in Kazakhstan or, according to some sources, in Afghanistan. He appears to have spent most of his life in Baghdad, although he is also known to have visited Egypt and Syria, where he died in Damascus in late 950 or early 951 CE. A leading intellectual in the Golden Age of Islam, Al-Farabi studied the writings of Aristotle, and is said to have invented the Arabic tone system that is still in use today. His great book of music focused on Persian musical traditions, and in his Meanings of the Intellect he discussed the therapeutic qualities of music.
Don't cry when a good person died. Cry for the society which lost him.
Musical patterns. As with the early, oral traditions of music in the West, music that was halal, or permitted, in the Islamic world was improvised around formulaic patterns, whether melodic or rhythmic. These musical building blocks could be combined and repeated in different ways according to the function or structure of the text. A line of verse could be elaborated musically and, in songs and instrumental pieces, different forms could be combined into longer cycles known as nawba. Drums and strings. The principal instrument of the Arab world was the oud. This pear-shaped, short-necked, plucked string instrument is the ancestor of the European lute and has a fretted fingerboard. Arabic melodic modes, or groupings, known as maqam, related primarily to the frets on the oud strings. The oud and other Arabic instruments such as the rab, a simple bowed instrument, and the nakha, a pair of small drums, filtered along trade routes, through Muslim Spain into the Western music of medieval minstrels and troubadours. Sufi music. Unlike Orthodox Islam, Sufi devotional music included not only vocal pieces but instruments, such as reed pipes, flutes, and drums, and dancing. The most popular and enduring tradition of Sufi devotional music is Qawwali, which originated in 8th century Persia. This fused with Indian traditions by the late 13th century to create the form that is now known on the Indian subcontinent. Singers recite Sufi verses, ranging from love poetry to songs praising Allah and the Prophet Muhammad. All are seen as spiritual. The desire expressed in love poetry is interpreted as the longing for spiritual union with the divine. Musical accompaniment includes the sarangi, a bowed string instrument, percussion instruments such as the tabla, a small drum, and dholak, a two-headed drum, and a chorus of 4 or 5 men who repeat key verses and add hand clapping to the percussion. After. From the 16th century, the more orthodox communities forbade instruments and dancing altogether, although other traditions flourished. The living Arabic musical genre of Maluf began in Andalusia in Spain under Islamic rule, and was displaced to North Africa after the 1492 reconquest of Spain. In the Ottoman Empire following the fall of Constantinople, now Istanbul, Turkey, in 1453, Eastern musical traditions diverged completely from Western, and Istanbul remains a hub of Islamic music. Court music continued to flourish in Mughal India, where Akbar the Great had an orchestra of at least 50 musicians. Thank you for listening to Music History Podcast by Viola Studio Channel. Please leave us your comments and opinions.